Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with another Q&A. This is season 2, episode 20. We're getting up in our numbers, huh? That's what? Like a third of a year?
Just over.
Yeah, more than a third of a year. So there we go. But anyways, getting straight into the questions, or I guess we can't really say that anymore. But first question comes from Edwardo Lozano, and they say, I have a question. I did the breakthrough event, and I did it on Red Sun Superman, and it only let me promote it once, and it doesn't let me get XP, so we can't get up to 60. Any advice?
Superman.
Well, it's sort of hard to tell which bit of information you need and that you're missing, so here goes. So each time you pick a card after finishing breakthrough, it unlocks one promotion past Elite 7. So I'm being very specific with the words I'm using. I'm saying unlocks. You can't go past level 50 until you are Elite 10. And unlocking promotion is different than unlocking a card in your store. So
Or getting a card. It's neither of those things.
Right. So meaning you can't actually do the promotion, even though it's unlocked, unless you already have a copy, or you can buy another one, a promotion, in your store. And that's sort of relevant to your question specifically because Red Sun Superman has never been unlockable. So it sounds like, 1, you haven't hit Elite 10 yet, and 2, without knowing more, it's also possible that you don't have extra copies.
Though you did say it only let me promote them once, which seems to indicate that you did try it with one copy and had another one available.
I don't even know if...
Who knows?
So it's possible you haven't completed breakthrough enough times. So even if you had the extra copies, you need to do it 3 times and have 3 extra copies to get to Elite 10 before you can start getting more XP to get past level 50.
Yeah, so I guess to answer your question, it's working as intended. There's nothing you can do about it.
It sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah. Unless there's something we don't know, yeah. The next question comes from Beats Gaming, and they say, I have another question though. I keep hearing from other people and you guys that your players are augmented. I understand how that works, but really, do augmentations really improve the character?
Really, really improve the character.
Really, yeah, sorry. Like, is it really useful? I know if you have 99,000 health and you want 100,000 or whatever have you, you can make it look better, but is it really a game changer? Should I aim for augmentations or the gear set in Survivor? My multiplayer team is kind of cool, and I want your feedback to know if I'm doing it right. Because I don't want a team that everyone uses, because I like uniqueness. Anyways, I use Shazam, 10, I'm assuming elite level, Man of Steel Superman, 9, and Arkham Origins Catwoman, 7, all maxed, and just regular basic damage dealer gear and health and regen gear, but no sets. And also Killing Joke Joker, Elite 7. Love you guys, hope y'all get back next Q&A, or Q at A, but...
And, well, I guess your wishes come true. Alright, so let's break this question.
Hope has come true, I wouldn't call it a wish, that might be bumping us up a grade.
Alright, so let's break this question down a bit because there's a lot of stuff packed in together. So the first part, is it really a game changer? So the parts that really are, so crit chance of 50% versus 0% on base.
Yeah.
And crit damage of 250 versus 150% base. So, alright, so if you just look at the numbers and you take it in aggregate, effectively half or 50% of the time you're getting an extra 100% damage.
And that's just on the buff. If you consider not having any crit chance gear, half the time you're getting 250% of the damage that you would get otherwise.
Oh, that's
as
true.
As long as you're assuming no crit gear.
Right, so that's before gear. Yeah, absolutely right.
So it's half the time you're getting 100% damage or half the time you're getting 150% damage, depending on the way you think about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh no, 250.
An extra 100 or an extra 150, yeah.
Or an extra 250 compared to somebody who doesn't have crit chance at all.
Yeah.
All right. So on the worst case scenario, you're averaging out at an extra 50% of your base damage. It's not taken into account in matchmaking, so absolutely that part, game changer, and we've said that from the very beginning when the augmentation started.
Yeah, so it just gives you so much more damage.
So the damage and health is more interesting, right? So the way the damage boost works is when you've got a card that's been level 1, Elite 0, it has sort of base stats, right? It's got the damage and the health. Mm-hmm. And the damage boost, the augmentation maxes out at 300 points over the base. And the health, same, 300 points over the base. So depending on the character, that could be more than double the base stat for bronze or be less than 25% boost for certain golds.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that is taken into account in matchmaking, so you'll face tougher opponents, unless you're already facing the toughest opponents available. So if you're using maxed out high level recent challenge golds, then yeah, it will be advantage because you're already facing the toughest guys anyways.
Yeah, it'll make things easier for you, and it'll make you just slightly more likely to be in those championship fights for other people.
Right.
And also slightly more likely to win.
So you'll draw more defensive fights, absolutely. Right.
And you might win more if the stats make the difference.
Right. So if you're not at the top tier and you're doing the augmentation, all it'll do is actually make your matches a little bit harder because matchmaking will, depending on where you sort of sit right now, it'll actually make your opponents a little bit harder.
Yeah, you'll get the same abilities, but whatever they do will be a little bit kind of, I'd say, more insignificant because you're working with higher stats. So if everyone's dealing more damage, little kind of ability boosts don't necessarily have the same effect.
Right.
Which is why bronzes aren't as good even when they're like scaled up using dark side.
Right.
Yeah.
And honestly, the best way to figure it out, if it's going to be any good, is to try it. Now, the problem with that is that you can't reverse augmentation. So even if you were willing to not switch them to someone else, like if you're just willing to just say negate it, you can't do that, right? So you're stuck with whatever decision you make.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing you've got to actually think about, I mean, it's not like you can do much about it, but you've got to consider unintended consequences. So as an example, if your basic damage dealer starts out doing more damage than you're used to and finishes off the first guy too fast, you have less time to generate power. And if your strategy involves having that first or second bar of power, increasing the damage might actually make your fights harder until you figure out how to adjust your fight strategy.
Yeah, which would suck.
So as an example, right? So Elseworld Flash, sometimes if I know that I'm going to be trying to avoid somebody dropping in and doing a whole bunch of stun, splash damage, special ones with Cloak of Destiny, I rely on having to building up that first bar of power and then using my special one to finish off the first guy. And because it's a multi-hit special, I don't take the stun damage on tagging.
For sure.
So it depends. Yeah, honestly, you sort of have to try it out. Some things you can figure out in theory a little bit, but some things you just have to try out.
Yeah.
So the other part you're talking about is, should I aim for augmentations or the gear set in Survivor? Yes. So this is one of those goofy things where we're being sort of dicks by answering an either or question by saying yes.
Well, you are. I'm not answering the question
true.
at all.
All right. So the only thing that you really shouldn't aim for is getting the ha-ha-ha, and that's obvious, right?
And really, it is very hard without a pretty like significant time investment to actually really like pick one over the other purposefully.
And I don't think you can, right?
It's not really usable, yeah.
Both of them, I mean, in the short term, almost everyone is desperate for the gear sets, and you can finish it faster, right? Because you only need 3 of each of the 3 9 different legendary gears, right?
Yeah.
But if you play, at least the ones that are available, because there's some that have cycled out that may not be coming back. So, but if you play long enough, it's hard not to get them. That's the short term. In the long term, almost everyone is desperate for augmentations, right?
Because you're always going to need more crit chance and crit damage augmentations. There's almost no way that you're not going to have a character that you want to put them in now. And even if you don't, there's going to be a new character that you're going to want to put them in because they're going to be one of the best characters in the game at the point they're released.
I totally agree with you. So that's why it's not so much an either-or proposition as it is which stage of Injustice are you playing proposition. If you don't have the gear sets, of course you'll want them, but the augmentations can make a big difference, and if you play long enough, you're going to want those too.
Yeah. I mean, I understand why they do it, but it would almost be good if there was, like, kind of chunks where there was, instead of having, like, a legendary gear set, they just had, like, an increased augmentation chance. So that, like, there was more of those. Like, maybe there was no gear at all or something, or there was just some kind of difference just for generally, because those are super useful.
Because it might not seem like it right now, but once you get all the legendary gears, they're good for shards, but you'd rather get augmentations.
Yeah, you really don't need any more unless you need shards. But in that case, gear lockers are by far the most efficient way of getting those.
Yeah. All right, so the part, and there's another part of your question, because I don't want a team that everyone uses because I like uniqueness. All right, so here's the other thing, too. The biggest complaint when it comes to uniqueness is that people who were playing high-stat golds used to face the same opponents almost exclusively.
Yeah.
Especially in the last rungs of the Epic or Ultimate ladders in MP Online. So we're talking the 5 and 7 fight battles, right? And that had a lot to do with power creep and how the matchmaker needs to match you against opponents who had progressively higher stats. So eventually you'd only face the same high-stat characters if you're playing with maxed-out golds, right?
Yeah.
And that has changed hugely with the start of Breakthrough. And we're seeing way more variety. Clearly Elseworld Flash, Containment Doomsday, and Green Lantern are not high stat golds, but when we do play those big teams, lots more variety. So the one thing to keep in mind is that there are a lot of unique teams, but we typically don't see them as often because when you're using max out golds, there's not a lot of variety for the matchmaker to use against you, right?
Yeah.
And so the matchmaker ends up giving a lot of more of the defensive fights to the same teams. So it seems like that's what most people are using. And listen, I'm not going to say that there weren't some people trying to take advantage of this by using defense teams that they're made up of these, magnet characters that draw fights. And sure, because that was happening, right? But there are people using lots of other teams that weren't getting defensive draws and weren't being seen because your team doesn't slot into the bracket that would make the matchmaker give them to you in fights.
Yeah, I think one of the issues here is that there's a kind of a big unknown in the exact algorithm that matches you. And so when we keep getting matched to the same characters, I mean, theoretically, if it did really strongly just the best match for the algorithm, for any given team, there would almost always just be one type of team you'd face as long as somebody had that in, right? But it doesn't look like it's always exactly the same, even if you have the exact same team. And even if you're playing like back-to-back, right? So you're assuming that nobody's swapping out mid-time. So it seems like there's a little bit of a kind of randomization factor, but we don't know how much, and we don't know how kind of loose that randomization factor is. We don't know what range they're looking for.
Because look at the fights we're facing right now, right? We're playing with a sub-maximal gold team.
Yeah.
And we're getting lots of nice variety.
And not just like variety in the same guys, but different amounts of augmented or different amounts of elite and level and stuff. We're getting actual like a lot of character variety too.
So that's why it's so good to play with lower stat golds, silvers, and bronzes, right? It's a lot more fun. And if you're getting tired of facing the same old guys, you gotta give it a try.
Yeah. So that's good. And our final question comes from Jared Bewley, and they say, "Can you try a team for me? It's Arkham Deathstroke, Jessica Cruz, and Containment Doomsday. If not, could you give me some advice on that team, please?"
All right, so I guess this goes to the question of viewer requests, right? A little bit, because you're not the first, and you'll definitely not be the last person who's.
Well, we hope you won't be the last.
Yeah, we'll try out different teams, but only if it either tickles our fancy or there's something really compelling about it. And actually, coming up, we've got a team that was inspired by a comment about Man of Steel Zod, and it made me want to try him again. So we've got a team with the Man of Steel. Ooh, crash.
Oh no.
So if you're asking about this team because those are the guys that you've got, then the best way is to try it out for yourself. And if you're having problems, then you figure out whether you need to change the gears, maybe the team composition, or even the way that you're playing and how you're approaching each fight.
Yeah, ironically, a lot of the advice we give for stuff like this is stuff that kind of, I wouldn't say makes us useless, but makes us a lot less useful as far as answering these questions, because a lot of what we're going to tell you about any specific group of characters is what generally is the most useful way to think about building a team,
like an overall meta kind of strategy, right?
Yeah.
So the obvious problems with the team that you've got is that Containment Doomsday is a low stat gold. So Arkham Origins Deathstroke and Containment Doomsday have very personal passives, but Jessica Cruz doesn't get as much out of her passive without Rebirth or Green Lantern teammates. So that's sort of the limitations, right? But when we set up teams, we have an idea of what we want to do, whether it's a specific passive or maybe a combo under some feature of that character that's going to slot in a team.
And hopefully something, when good, that either fulfills the role completely or works in tandem with something else.
And then we figure out how we want to fill up the rest of the team, and then we play it. And listen, if it works great, then we don't need to make any changes, right? If it doesn't, then we look at the fights we're losing and figure out some way to deal with whatever might be the problem.
Yeah, a lot of the relevant game strategy is actually based off of the meta about who gets played a lot, right? Whereas if you've got Killer Frost, healing gear is not as important, right? So, or if you're fighting a lot of Killer Frost, right? So you gear them up that way not whether it would work or not, not whether it would be good or not, but based off of whether it's kind of viable if you run up against a certain team. So
we like suggestions.
Yeah.
But there needs to be some more than just try out this character, try out that character.
Tell us why it's cool.
Yeah. So the reason why we're doing Zod is because Zod's passive is sort of like a cheap Green Lantern. He takes less specials, and I didn't realize this until I saw the comment. Or I've forgotten this until I saw the comment that it actually supposed to decrease the super damage too.
Yeah.
So he makes a perfect tank. Man of Steel Superman, because there's a chance at no cost specials, he's a great specialist. He can change the game like instantly, and I can't tell you how satisfying it is when you know you're only supposed to get it like 1 in 3 times,
and then you get it like twice in a row
or 4 times in a row.
Yeah.
And where you use no power at all for a special. That is so cool.
I'm not sure what random number generator they use to generate it, but all that stuff is, I don't know, it always seems like it's maybe not truly random. But we'll take it.
All right. And so that's our last question. This is our last fight. So why don't we finish this up?
Yeah. I think the most fun teams, actually, that we've played with aren't the best teams.
Oh, no, yeah, for sure.
Definitely the most fun to watch, but I think a lot of the most fun to play teams are even the ones that are actually a little bit more dangerous to take into multiplayer.
Right. I want to point out too, the reason I tagged in Doomsday was just because he had to borrow power, because that concept we're talking about in terms of which move prioritizes, it prevents Arkham Knight from actually getting a hit on us because we can use a special, and he had more than a bar, but our special prioritizes over his.
There we go.
There you go.
So that was the video. That was the last fight. That was the Q&A. Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next time. Komoda.